Today, on the Barricade Guard Show, we are going to discuss the precious gift of human life and how and why you should defend it. So in case you haven't noticed from my previous videos, I love my kids. Out of all the good things that God has blessed me with in this life, there is no thing and no person that I would be as ready and willing to lay down my life for as my children. I can still remember when our first baby was born, our daughter Maria, holding her in my arms and thinking about how much I loved her and would do anything for her. Every child deserves to be loved and cherished like this, and it breaks my heart that some children not only miss out on this love, but are so unwanted that their lives are ended before they are even born. But what about those who disagree with me because they think that what is growing inside the mother is not a person until birth or some other point during pregnancy? After all, I would agree that if what is in the mother's womb is not a living human being, then abortion does not need any special justification. But if what is in the mother's womb is a living human being, then abortion can never be justified. So how can we explain this in a way that makes the point, but is easy to understand? Really simply, I think we can make the case that what is growing inside a mother's womb is a human being by asking a few simple questions. If it's growing, isn't it alive? If it has human parents, isn't it human? And human beings like you and I have value, don't we? And that value is tied to our very nature as human beings. So it's not dependent on things such as size, because human beings come in all shapes and sizes, level of development, because a newborn is much less developed than an adult, but is still a human being, environment, because moving 8 inches to leave the womb doesn't change whether or not someone is a human being, or degree of dependency, because being dependent, even exclusively dependent on one person, doesn't change whether or not someone is a human being. In fact, a child in the womb is exactly as dependent as they are supposed to be for a human being their age. Okay, so maybe you're with me so far, but still feel conflicted about difficult circumstances that tug at your heartstrings. You want to value and protect the unborn, but you also want to be loving and merciful to women that feel scared and alone when facing a difficult or unplanned pregnancy. Sometimes we are confronted with emotionally challenging situations, such as poverty or potential neglect, that make people wonder if abortion is the least bad option available. However, once we have established that what is in the womb is a human being, it's often helpful to ask, how would we handle the situation if we were talking about a 2-year-old? Most people will agree that it would be wrong to kill a 2-year-old because of her family being poor, an absent father, or because of some other difficult circumstances. And if we shouldn't kill a 2-year-old human being for those reasons, then we shouldn't kill a younger human being for those reasons either, even if they are so young that they aren't even born yet. That doesn't mean that we should be cold or heartless towards the pregnant woman, but it does mean that the loving and caring solution that we offer should consider both the mom and the precious baby growing inside of her. And one of the reasons that we need to consider the unborn babies is because of how defenseless and vulnerable they are. We instinctually recognize that people who are more helpless deserve more protection, not less. For instance, if someone didn't like what I was saying right now and walked up and punched me in the face, you might think that was bad. Maybe you'd think it was good. But if someone didn't like my 8-month-old son and punched him in the face, you would probably think that was much worse, precisely because he's so helpless. And if children in the womb are the most helpless human beings, then they deserve the most protection, not the least. But now let's take a look at another objection. Some people might agree that what is inside the mother's womb is a living human being, but still say there is no issue with her choosing to have an abortion. After all, can't women choose to do whatever they want with their bodies? First off, even most people who are okay with abortion would answer no to this question. While they might be okay with completely ending the life inside the mother's womb, they generally feel hesitant about saying it's okay for pregnant mothers to use hard drugs or consume alcohol. Or, take for instance the drug thalidomide. It was commonly used in the late 1950s and early 1960s to treat morning sickness. That is, until it was discovered that it caused severe birth defects in thousands of children. But what if a woman said, it's my body, it's my choice. My morning sickness is unbearable and thalidomide makes me feel better. It's my body, just give me thalidomide. Most people would agree that this would be morally wrong and should be legally wrong as well. In response, some people might say, fine, a pregnant woman can't knowingly do something to cause the baby to suffer or be deformed, but it's still okay to just terminate the pregnancy if she chooses. The points and counterpoints commonly offered in these discussions can be complex, but here are a few things to keep in mind. First, the baby in the mother's womb came into existence through an act that is ordered towards the creation of a new human person. And if you consent to the act, then you must accept the consequences of the action. For instance, you can't consent to the act of drinking and driving, but then not accept the consequences if you cause an accident. Second, the uterus is an organ in the woman's body specifically designed to assist the developing human fetus. So saying that the baby in the womb has a right to be there is not the same thing as saying one person has a right to another person's kidney or bone marrow. The purpose of your kidneys and bone marrow is to keep you alive, but the purpose of a mother's womb is to keep someone else alive. Therefore, if you're responsible for creating someone who needs you, then you can't morally choose to cut off that support that they need, in part because you created them. You are responsible for them needing you, so you are responsible for their needs. At least, at a bare minimum, you are obligated to not take direct action to end their life. But what if a woman didn't consent to the act that created the baby? What if the act took place against her will? First and foremost, when addressing these situations, we must always start by expressing our sympathy and concern for the woman. She needs to know that we care about her as a person and want what is truly best for her. Once that has been done thoroughly, we must also show concern for the baby as well, and work to find a non-violent solution to the situation that is safe for both the mother and the child. Another common objection involves situations regarding the health of the mother. Sometimes, when a mother is facing a life-threatening health condition, the difficult choice must be made between accepting medical treatment that jeopardizes the life of the baby or jeopardizing the life of the mother through a heroic act of virtue by foregoing medical treatment to preserve the health of the baby, such as in the case of Saint Gianna Mala. When these tragic situations arise, it is morally permissible for the mother to treat a disease or medical condition, even if the loss of the child might be a foreseeable but unintended side effect. But what we can never do is use direct abortion as a medical treatment. The most common example of this type of situation would be an ectopic or tubal pregnancy, which does have a morally permissible treatment option that does not require the use of direct abortion. So if you've stuck with me this far, maybe you're on board with these compelling reasons why we should value and protect the lives of human beings, even at their youngest and earliest stages of development. But is there a reason why this issue is any more important than other problems in the world these days? What about poverty, immigration, and environmental concerns? Don't all of these things affect people's lives, and therefore shouldn't all of these issues be considered equally? Absolutely not. As an example, let's imagine a scenario where there are two bad schools on opposite ends of a city. In the first bad school, when a student misbehaves, they are belittled in front of their classmates or not allowed to eat lunch that day. In the second bad school, when a student misbehaves, they are taken out back and killed. Now, would anyone say, well, being belittled, missing lunch, and being killed all negatively affect those children, so none of those issues is more of a priority than the others? I don't think so, and neither do you. Addressing one of those issues is clearly a higher priority than the others. And while it would be bad enough if even a single innocent human life was ended through abortion, let's just take a minute to put the gravity of this issue in context. Has abortion only affected a small number of people, and are more innocent people dying from other pressing issues? In reality, nothing comes even remotely close to ending as many human lives as abortion. Every year since 1973, over 600,000 unborn babies have had their lives ended. And from 1980 to 1997, that number was well over 1 million every year. So since 1973, over 63 million babies have been killed by abortion just here in the United States. That would be like taking all of the American deaths from the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World Wars I and II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, and multiplying them more than 57 times. Or it would be like 9/11 happening every single day for 58 years straight. The defense of the unborn is clearly the most important human rights issue facing our generation. No other war, natural disaster, or public policy is causing the death of more human beings than abortion. Not even close. And as the Catechism of the Catholic Church tells us in paragraph 2273, the inalienable right to life of every innocent human individual is a constitutive element of a civil society and its legislation. The inalienable rights of the person must be recognized and respected by civil society and the political authority. These human rights depend neither on single individuals nor on parents, nor do they represent a concession made by society and the state. They belong to human nature and are inherent in the person by virtue of the creative act from which the person took his origin. Among such fundamental rights one should mention in this regard every human being's right to life and physical integrity from the moment of conception until death. And while the best way to handle many social, economic, and environmental issues are matters of prudential judgment, direct abortion is intrinsically evil and can never be justified. And to be clear, I'm not saying that people who have had abortions are evil. No. They have the same value and dignity as all human beings and deserve love, respect, and healing just as much as anyone else. We can never judge people, but we must make moral judgments about particular actions. And the act of direct abortion is always, always wrong. So what should we do? What can we do? Is this problem just too big to solve? For us alone? Yes. But with God, all things are possible. So we must always start with prayer and fasting. If we aren't doing these faithfully and consistently, we should not expect our other efforts to bear fruit. And because this is a personal, moral, and legal issue, we must take steps to change hearts, minds, and laws. We must care for mothers facing unplanned pregnancies and offer them love, support, and resources. We can donate and volunteer at pregnancy centers and directly connect with mothers that we are aware of in our church and our communities that we know might be in need of some extra help. We must learn, at least on a basic level, how to intellectually defend the value of human life. I've tried to cover some of the basics in this video, but for much more information, I would highly recommend checking out the book Persuasive Pro-Life by Trent Horn. Trent is an outstanding speaker and apologist, and many of the arguments I have presented, I've learned from him. We can then bear witness to these truths by having dialogues and conversations with others, and by participating in opportunities to educate and advocate for life. Always try to keep your conversations focused on the main issue. What are the unborn? Rather than getting sidetracked by related but separate issues. Most people are still uncomfortable with supporting abortion up until the moment of birth, so try asking questions that help to define terms and uncover the reasons why the person you're talking with might be against at least some abortions. You can ask questions like, what is abortion and what does it do to the fetus? What is a human? What's wrong with being pro-abortion? Why is it wrong to kill a newborn baby? Why is abortion a sad or difficult choice? And my personal favorite, are there any abortions that you disagree with? And if so, why? And if they agree that at least some abortions are wrong, then you can use the methods that I previously mentioned to help them to understand that size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency don't change the value of the human being and the protection they deserve. For years now, my family and I have been volunteering at the ProLife stand at our local fair, standing for life in prayer as part of the annual Life Chain, and marching for life in Washington, D.C., and in our home state of Pennsylvania. Throughout the years, these events have sometimes been somber reminders of how much work was still ahead of us. But at other times, they have been joyful celebrations of victories for the value of human life. And as important as it is to change hearts and minds, we must also work to change laws. As Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, "It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can stop him from lynching me, and I think that's pretty important." So while we are working on helping everyone to recognize the value and dignity of human life, it's still important to legally protect the unborn as well. And to do this, we must vote pro-life. We must recognize that when we have a choice between two candidates, one of which is pro-life and one of which supports legal abortion, there is currently no other accumulation of counterbalancing issues that come remotely close to carrying the same or more moral weight as the issue of abortion. Someday, when we are blessed to have multiple pro-life candidates to choose from in a general election, we can then proceed to evaluate other important issues and weigh them appropriately. But until then, the over 63 million and counting victims of abortion are counting on us to recognize that the right to life is the preeminent issue and then vote accordingly. What can you do to defend the value of human life? Do you have other ideas or examples to share? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from it as well. It really does help out me and the channel. Don't forget to follow the Barricade Guard on Facebook, X, and Instagram. The links are in the show notes below. And until next time, fortify your soul, body, and family.